Hello and welcome to the Oddschecker betting show. I'm your host, George Elek, and this is a Champions Day preview with two expert guests. We have our very own, the stalwart who plays every game in the season, Andy Holding, and making his debut, and I think what can be described as making a debut kind of in the Champions League final, I guess, for Champions Day. Delighted to be joined for the first time by John O'Connell as well. And John, I'll come to you first. Before we get into the racing, the more important stuff, let's find out a bit about yourself for those who are watching or listening who aren't aware of what you do and who you are. Just give us a quick rundown of, I don't know, how you got into the sport and what you do day to day.
Just been a big fan of horse racing since I was a kid. I've worked in it all my working life. Been an odds compiler for major bookmakers for 30 odd years. That's been my main thing, setting the prices from as soon as the races come out. So you've got nothing else to work from. It's purely just you and a blank sheet of paper. But that's changed over the last few years. So I've now been doing full-time punditry, whether it be for the radio or racing TV.
Great stuff. And you're a big fan of Champions Day. What have you made of it as since its inception?
Yeah, we've had some cracking stuff. People are always going to be talking about whether it's too late because of the ground, but it's just the way. You could almost have it 3 weeks earlier, and you could have soft ground on that occasion, and then you'd have to move all the other fixtures around Europe. So it's where it is, and it's working fine. We get big size fields, and it should be a cracking day on Saturday.
Yeah, it should be, with the added intrigue of the Jockeys Championship as well. We can't talk about that in too much depth because we're recording this on Thursday morning at about 11:30. So with a full book of rides, or not so much with Oisin at Chelmsford this evening, this would age pretty quickly if we were to talk about it. But as it stands at the moment, William Buick 2 short of Oisin with 3 days to go. I think just about picking prices. Oisin that just about the favourite as we record. Andy, what do you make of this as a betting heat? You know, we speak a lot about Ascot and the quirks of Ascot and how it's important to have some course form there. I guess in the same way, continuing with the football analogies, often people say there's no value in Premier League football because all the form is out there. There's so much liquidity. It's hard to really get an angle. And I guess in a way, Champions Day is as close as you're going to get to that, where there are no secrets to be held by any of these. We know what we're going to get. How do you rate it as a punting spectacle for that reason?
I think it's a great season-ending 6 races for punters to get stuck into, because, as you said, the form's there for all to see. We've had a good year of it, 2 years of it. In the case of quite a few of these horses are rocking up again here, again as they did last year, or even the year before in some instances. So we've got a good body of work of knowing which horses act well at Ascot, particularly this time of year. And I kind of tend to throw away some of the early season form and look for those that have been targeted specifically for this meeting. I'd rather go a targeted horse than a horse that comes here as a bit of an afterthought, because there has been a couple of runs you could easily forgive. Perhaps they've run in races that haven't suited or on ground that they wouldn't have suited. But come here in the autumn, a certain kind of horse tends to come back here and rock up every time and run really well. And I think the bookmakers are forced almost to price up on what's happened rather than almost kind of like try and second guess what might be coming. I think as a punter, you can spot the value and where the mistakes are made.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to get into the racing in just a second. But before we do so, just going to point you in the direction of the Oddschecker app. It is the best place. We're going to be talking about the best prices available to you punters throughout this episode. So the app is the place to find those. You'll get the best each way terms as well. Plenty of bookies sticking their neck out for extra places. Free bets you'll find there as well. And of course, on the app, you'll find some of the very best tipsters in the game, including Andy Holding himself, whose tips will be up on the app at about 9 o'clock every day's racing as well. So make sure you do check that out. Into the racing now, and the opener. We're going to go through the cards, 6 race card, 1 through to 6. And the first race on the day is the Long Distance Cup. As I say, we're recording this not long after final decks are out. So the markets are reforming as we speak. I'm going to do my best to kind of be across all the different bookies as they do come out. And in the Long Distance Cup, best price at the moment, you're going to be getting about the favourite Trushan is 11-8. 11-8 with both Bet365 and William Hill, who are the first 2 firms who are out. Stradivarius 4-1. Hamish 6-1. Princess Zoe 15-2. Baron Samedi 8-1, Berkshire Rocco 14s, the Mediterranean 20s, Roberto Escobar 25s, 33-1 bar the last 4. Given it's your debut, and given that I've heard Andy talking about Trushan and Stradivarius more times than I can believe, going to come over to you first here, John, for first run in the Long Distance Cup.
Well, 3 of these ran in the Prix de Cadran a fortnight ago, and obviously testing conditions over in France at Longchamp. Trushan came out best on that occasion. Stradivarius now this season, I think 3 runs we've seen Stradivarius looking maybe £6-7 below the Stradivarius that we knew the peak one from last season. Trushan had his measure on a couple of occasions in the last 12 months, including this race last year. Princess Zoe was disappointed in the Cadran a few weeks ago. I don't know if anything came to light, but I thought we'd perform better than that. Trushan, I expect, would probably come at best of the 3, but I'm worried about the fact that this wouldn't be an afterthought, I don't think. I think this has been in the back of the minds for all 3 of them. But I'm worried if you go 2.5 miles in Paris a few weeks ago, even if you won a good start like Trushan has, I just wonder if you've had a bit of a hard race there. When Trushan won this race last year, he came a little more under the radar. He'd had a few months off since a run, I think, in the Ebor. But this is a bit different. He's coming here 2 weeks on, and I'm just I've got a nagging little worry in the back of my mind about a horse coming here just 2 weeks after that tough race. The ground conditions on Saturday it'll be on the soft side, but it probably wouldn't be as soft as Trushan wants. Ideally, he wants real cut in the ground. The one I think could be a player in the race is Hamish. They've had problems with the horse getting into the track in the last 18 months. He ran at Ascot Royal Meeting last year, was running a big race in the Hardwick Stakes. Then he got injured after that, so he missed the Ebor. And he came back at Kempton 6 weeks ago, and it was a huge effort to beat Huckham in that race on the all weather that day. We don't know much about him on over 2 miles, but he's always looked as if this were a trip should suit. I think Hamish is going to be a big, big player in this race, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if he turned over the big ones in the market.
Hamish there, the choice there for John. 6-1 best price as it stands with Bet365. Getting a 5th to 3 at the moment, I think, with that short price favourite. Trushan 11-8. Probably unlikely you're going to be getting any more places there. But if you did want to back each way, 6-1 Hamish, the one for John. Andy, you've been Team Trushan all year. Just finally got your just rewards. What's the play here, in your opinion? Now the market kind of reflects what you've been saying all season.
Yeah, I feel as though I should invest in one of those like yellow and blue scarves that are traditional at the racetrack now that we see. Like I think since the big bucks days, wasn't it? Many years ago, when all the race goes don those their favourite colours. Yeah, Trushan, I've been a fully paid up member of this fella ever since he really won this race last year, when he clocked an absolute truly sensational time figure, and it was the best speed figure on that 6 race card last year. And when he's had his conditions, he's pretty much proven that there was no fluke about his 11-1 victory. We're not going to get any 11-1 this time. It's 11-8 this time. So you have to sort of hold yourself back sometimes and think, well, can I find a better 11-8 chance in a market on a run-of-the-mill day of the week? I think the answer would probably be yes. But as it stands, Trushan comes in here with the best form, doesn't he? He's already beaten the best stayers, including Stradivarius. And he proved in the Cadran last time out that, 2 miles, 2.5 miles, he's just basically unbeatable when there's ease in the ground, and there is going to be ease in the ground come Saturday. I think it's good to soft in place on the round track with showers on Friday. I think one or two little specks of showers, which will probably keep the ground as it is at the moment all the way through to Saturday. It's all tumnel ground anyway, which is what he wants basically. So yeah, for those that like to hit heavy hit at 11-8, it's there for the taking. Whether I get stuck into him, I don't know. He's certainly not going to be a horse, even though I love him to bits. I'm going to put in my column. It's not my style to put an 11-8 shot up on a Saturday when I've got 5 other races to have a good crack at. I think if I was looking for a value bet like John has looked with regards Hamish, I can certainly buy into that theory. I'd look away from the obvious one, Stradivarius and Princess Zoe, because I think they've had fairly hard seasons, and albeit this race has always been at the back of Connections' mind, they've had 6 and 7 runs respectively to come here, whereas the likes of Baron Samedi and perhaps Berkshire Rocco, I think, have very much geared their season around for this race. You look at their 2 respective campaigns. Baron Samedi, he had his last run over in France in July, And then he was off the track for 70 days before he made his reappearance again at the Curragh the other day in the Irish St Leger, when he was third behind Sonny Boy Liston. And he was doing all his best work at the end. He stays 2 miles, as he proved out in America. And they put the cheek pieces on him as well, just to kind of sharpen his ideas up in mid-race. He's got a good draw as well. He's drawn his stall too, so he should get a lovely run around the inner. And Berkshire Rocco's the same. He's just had the 2 runs this season, so he's going to be fresher than most. But he had a big break from running in Doha in February to come into Salisbury the day and got beaten in a tactical 4-runner conditions event. I think that was basically just a run to serve the purposes of getting him cherry ripe for this. And if you look at Baron Rocco's record here at Ascot, it reads really well. Second in the Queen's Vasa Santiago, and he beat Albaflora this time last year in a Group 3 race. So again, if you're looking at horses for courses, he's right up there with some of them. So I would probably look come Saturday to see what price Baron Samedi and Berkshire Rocco are, the pair of them, without the favourite. Because they're going to be, I would say, 4th and 5th favourites respectively. You're going to have Hamish, Princess Zoe, and Stradivarius ahead of them. So if I can get sort of 6, 7, 8 to 1, roughly around those 2, I'd probably be coupling those 2 in the race to get second. That's the way I'll probably end up playing it myself personally.
Yeah, no market as it stands at the moment for the without, but we'll keep an eye on that. And at the moment, as I say, Baron Samedi 8 to 1 with 365 best price. Berkshire Rocco 14 to 1 best price with 365. So they're the prices at the moment. So you can probably anticipate they're going to be about just a touch shorter than half that when it comes to the without market. But we'll see as the markets do reform. So yeah, I mean, not a negative for Truchamp by any stretch from Andy there, but maybe some value to be had at bigger prices. We'll move on then to the Sprint Stakes, the British Champion Sprint Stakes, where Dragon Symbol is the 7 to 2 favourite ahead of Art Power at 4 to 1. Rohan, same price at 4 to 1. Creative Force 11 to 2. Minzal 8 to 1. Kinross 12 to 1. Glen Shiel and Vadri both 14 to 1. 16 to 1. Gustavus Weston 20 to 1 bar. Andy, I'll come over to you first for this one.
Yeah, I mean, what a complex race this is on paper. I mean, I think it's the first time we've ever had as many runners as this. We had 12 last year, didn't we? And Dreams won. The year before, I think, was it Glen Shiel won? Or might have been, was it the other way around? It might have been Glen Shiel, Dream of Dreams. But either way, yeah, there was only sort of like between 10 and 12 runners. They're going to be pretty much spread right across the track. I'd imagine it'd be similar to what we saw the other day, a narrowing of the turf track, straight track at Ascot, meaning that they'll probably split into 2 groups. We'll get far side, stand side, and on the limited evidence of what we saw a few weeks back when Adayar in particular won that 7 furlong handicap, the far side seemed to have it by a country mile. And I think the last few years here at this meeting, that they've tended to migrate over towards that way. I think when Njord won the Balmoral handicap last year, he went far side. So it certainly makes life a little bit more difficult. I must admit, if I had to choose a stall for Art Power, my main fancy for this race, I certainly wouldn't have picked 20 of 20. That is a little bit of a stumbling block potentially. But I think he's coming here arguably in the best shape. I don't think he was necessarily right at his absolute best a couple of times this season, albeit he's run really well in adversity. I mean, he got a terrible draw in the July Cup. He was right on the far side wing, rowing his own boat, and he was miles clear of anything around him. But of course, he was on the wrong side, and he ended up finishing 4th when the likes of Starman and Creative Force, etc., all come up the near side rail. So he was unlucky there. But at the Curragh last time out, I haven't seen a sprinter hit the line as hard as he did and quicken as well as he did when he beat a good field that day. His time figure was very, very special. His back end sectionals, you can imagine, were very good. And it was one of the few times where he actually got a ride which he should have been given many times in the past. And this is the problem with Sylvester de Souza, and he's the biggest stumbling block for this horse not winning potentially on Saturday, because the way Sylvester rides, particularly when he gets his back up in a race like this and he sees the red mist, he tends just to like put his foot down from the gate and go. And that's not how to ride Ascot, and that's not how to ride Art Power. You've got to hold them up here. You've got to give them a chance of getting home in the last 2 furlongs. So if you're listening to this video, Sylvester, pay attention. Hold him up. don't hit the front until 2 furlongs out. That's how he needs to ride. He needs to look at Dave Allen's ride at the Courier of the Day. In fact, I wish Dave Allen was riding him, because that's the way he needs to be ridden. Held on to, given the lead off something, and then let go. So if he's given those tactics, and it's the big if, of course, I don't really know what Sylvester's doing or what he's thinking. He probably doesn't even know until he goes down to the start, or the stall's open even. But if everything goes swimmingly and he does give him a conservative ride, then I think he's got a massive chance of winning this. And luckily for him as well, he's got a few front runners towards the near side. He's got Highfield Princess, stall 18. He's got Happy Power as well in the same colours. I mean, there could be a bit of sort of ownership tactics here with Happy Power. If Rob Hornby's given the sort of nudge to sort of go on and make the run in, then it will give hopefully Sylvester a little bit of license to maybe sit and take a lead. But if he does get the lead I'm desiring and hoping for, then I think Art Power is going to be very, very difficult to kick out the first 3. He's in sensational form.
But you can't say the same for former champ Sylvester de Souza. The levels of disrespect, Andy, unbelievable.
Well, me and John have had discussions about Sylvester, and I'm happy as a pundit to stick by my guns and to say,
of course,
Sylvester does not ride this track particularly well. His record suggests that. I'm not having a go at him for just him personally as a jockey. I mean, I think he's a great jockey, but elsewhere he's fantastic. But Ascot, for some reason, he just doesn't seem to be able to get the tactics right.
Well, interestingly,
you need to hold them up on the straight track.
Hills have just opened since we've been talking, and they've gone really aggressive at the top end of the market. They make Art Power, Dragon Symbol, and Rohan 9-2, the 3 joint favourites as well. So they're sticking their neck out above 365, second firm out. John, how do you see this one going?
Yeah, Art Power, same as Andy. That looked a cracking performance in Ireland last time, and he got a different sort of ride. He was blasted out, especially at Haydock a couple of starts ago in the Sprint Cup that day. Got a very aggressive ride on that occasion, but he looked a much better horse for the slightly calmer, well, definitely calmer, more relaxed ride under David Allen in Ireland last time. Would have to mention Rohan, but I'm worried about Rohan at the start. He's dwelt, but given away maybe no more than a length on a few occasions. But that was a totally different thing in Ireland last time. He completely blew the start. Now, it may be a one-off, but I am worried about horses. If they do it once, they're almost just as liable to do it again. It can be a habit to get into. So for Rohan, I think people will be just it'll be almost fast as finger as soon as the stall's open, see how he looks. Horse I'm interested in is Minzal in the race. There's just a bit of a concern the race may come a little bit soon for him. He's been off the track for 12 months, up until Ascot here a few weeks ago, where I thought he ran very well over 5 furlongs. All his form, his races are juvenile were over 6. So I think the return to the extra furlong will be fine for him on Saturday. He's got there, as Andy said about the pace, there's pace on both sides. The low numbers, you've got Azano in there and Glen Shield, last year's winner, so they'll be going hard from the front. So Minzal will be able to track those pair through. And I think Minzal, whose single figure price has been well backed over the last 24, 48 hours, I think he could be the one. So Minzal for me, but I expect there's going to be 5 places here with quite a few bookmakers, may even be a 6 going round. And Vadream, who's got course form and has run 2 big races here this year, winning a few weeks ago and also running so well at the Royal Meeting as well. That could be another player as well, but I just probably prefer Minzal.
Yeah, Vadream finished 2 lengths behind Creative Force at Royal Ascot, and then one last time out on the track a couple of weeks ago as well. Big one for Charlie Fellows. I think he'd love to get a winner on Champions Day. 14-1 Vadream, 8-1 Minzal. But as John says, firms currently 3 places. This could be one. Unlikely to see a massive punt now. You wouldn't think so. It could be one just to hold fire and then back on the day when firms are giving you a few extra places to play with. Unlikely to be any extra places, you'd think, in the fillies and mares, where Snowfall is the 4-5 favourite in this 8-runner affair. Gets me excited. Albaflora 5-1, Invite 11-2, Ashada 7-1, La Joconde and Tribal Craft both 20-1, Lady Hayes 33s, Mystery Angel 40-1. And you mentioned there that 11-8 isn't really your style, but let's look at Snowfall as a 4-5 shot. I'm not saying you're necessarily going to tip up Snowfall, but can you find holes in Snowfall enough to get against her with any of the others?
Oh yeah, big time. I mean, this is one of the favourites I want to be taking on. I from a value perspective anyway. And albeit she ran reasonably well in the Arc de Triomphe, 6 in a stellar renewal. It's certainly not by any means a backward step, but the last 2 runs have definitely, for me anyway, suggested that she's probably not in the same kind of form that she was in the height of summer, particularly, of course, in the Oaks and then in the Irish Oaks respectively, and of course at York. Those runs may be taken out of a little bit more than we thought at the time. And she's been asked to peak again another 13 days later after running over 1.5 miles. And again, it's a classic situation we've got here of horses or a horse being targeted specifically at this race, coming here fresh off the back of a big win. And that filly is Invite. So for me, he's the standout candidate in this race by quite some time, particularly just based on the time figures at Weekeep. This horse almost superseded Snowfall's performances early on in the season in Group 1s when winning just a listed race at Chester. The numbers she clocked that day off the back of a searingly strong gallop was quite extraordinary. And of course, she beat all the older horses as well, the likes of Alignac and Wells Fargo. And she did it going away as well. I like the way she was very strong at the finish, suggesting that the step up to 1.5 miles really suited her. And she's got a great run style for Ascot. She's yet to run at Ascot, which is the only thing I could see as a negative in a CV. I do like to, in general, back horses who've run at Ascot before to be acclimatised with the track. But she is a hold-up filly. She likes to be switched off, dropped out, and that's what you need on the round track as well. You don't want horses up the speed, doing too much, liable not to get home. That Egan will just sit her mid-division or even towards her ear and just let her tootle along and then ask her to quicken once she turns for home. Hopefully she won't get into trouble with just 7 opponents. And I quite like the idea of John Egan riding her again, because he deserves to do so, having ridden her expertly around Chester. I'd make the Danger Albaflora, who's got some really good figures here at Ascot on soft ground, and she's had a fairly good season. She's been competing in Group 1s as well, so she's not going to find this company alien to her. So all in all, I'd want to be against Snowfall. I think she's a poor price. The bet is Invite each way with the dead out runners. That's definitely going to go into my each way multiples come the weekend with a healthy regard to Albaflora as well.
Would you ever back both of them each way, given this dead 8 and you're so anti the favourite?
I'd probably do a few 2x2s. I tend to on these weekends do, like, if I fancy 2 or 3 in the sprint, I probably would do 2 or 3 in that. Do maybe one drawn low and one drawn high. Have a couple of like Barrington Median, Berkshire, Rocco in the first race. Do a 2x3x2. I'll have like multiple bets, all covering all my fancies really. So I'll definitely stick Albaflora and Invite here with the dead 8 runners. I mean, at the absolute worst, one of them will be in the first 3, and you get the sweets if one of them wins. So yeah, that's my strategy come the weekend.
Good stuff. Interesting to get a bit of betting insight, betting theory from Andy as ever. John, how do you see this? As keen to take on Snowfall as Andy is?
I would be taking on Snowfall, probably not as keen as Andy. I've had a look at this race 4 or 5 times before I realised what the field looked like. I have no idea, unless I've missed stories this week, I don't know where Free Wind and Le Petit Coco are. They've dominated the market this week.
Search for a Song as well, John. There's another one.
Yeah. Yeah, Search for a Song. And that's another one. Yeah, it's not even in the opening race either. No. Bit of a bleat, but unless I've missed something, I have no idea why these horses aren't running. And these days, you got
Breeders'
so many.
Cup.
Well, it would be nice if something was tweeted or messaged in the last 24 or 36 hours so that we had an idea. It's hard work for punters as things are. But if you're suddenly looking at the race this morning, and it looks a totally different race than we were thinking earlier in the week. Just a little message saying we may not be going Saturday would have been nice. But now we're left with Snowfall having been about 6 to 1 or so yesterday.
I think Snowfall was 5.3 on the exchange when the market closed, which just showed how little talk there was about the non-runners ahead of it, and some people sitting on some lovely anti-post bets. I think by luck rather than design.
Yeah, Snowfall will probably. I think he'll probably win if it repeats the last 2 runs, which were well below the Oaks performances early in the year. But there's obviously a bit of a chance she could regress again. I am definitely in the Invite camp. I think this looks a cracking each way bet. The slight negative, Andy mentioned the fact he hasn't been to Ascot before. The Chester form could have worked out better. The 3 who ran behind her that day have ran moderately since then. But I'd be happy with Invite, because if you take Snowfall away, this looks probably the weakest Group 1 I've seen for quite a while. I think it's a big opportunity for something to get in there. Somebody's trainers and owners in this race must be looking at it and thinking this is a cracking opportunity we would not have been dreaming of having. So yeah, I'm in the each way camp for Invite as well. Big chance, and everything looks in place for it. Mind you, having lost those 3, as we mentioned, we might lose another one and end up with 7 runners.
Yeah, that's true. Invite currently 11-2, but as John is right to point out there, if one more comes out at this stage, suddenly those 3 places become 2. Although judging the way that Andy was talking of Invite's chances, I don't think he'd be too perturbed by that at all. Both very keen to take on Snowfall. Although, yeah, if you are sitting on a nice two-day decks, 48-hour decks bet on Snowfall, no one's going to take that 5-6 to 1 away from you. So well played to those out there who've done that. Onto the QE2, where Palace Pier is the 13-8 favourite ahead of Baid at 9-4. Alcohol Free 9-1 alongside the Revenant. Master of the Seas 10-1. Ben Battle 14-1. 20-1 Lady Bowthorpe and Mother Earth 100-1 bar. John, we'll come to you here first. We mentioned that was a very poor looking Group 1. I don't think the same can be said here. Some quality horses in this renewal. How do you see the market at the moment?
I think it's going to swing in favour of Palace Pier. At least with this race, both of them are turned up, and this has been billed as the big head-to-head for the last 6 weeks or 2 months or so. I'm firmly in the Palace Pier camp with this one. I am. Bide was hugely impressive all through the summer. The Goodwood race has taken a few knocks-ins. Certainly, the French Group 1 has taken a few knocks-ins. Palace Pier just returns to a track. I mean, he got beaten in this race last year, but he's had a lighter campaign this time round. I think he'll win. I think of the others, the Revenant has had a campaign geared towards this as last year, and I think the Revenant could be a big player, could be an each way value in the race. But I fancy Palace Pier of the big 2, and I've got a feeling that the market will shift more Palace Pier over Baid as we go closer to the race.
So you think the 13-8 worth taking now, with that likely to shorten until Saturday?
Yeah, I would think, even if it stays the same, possibly Baid will drift, but I think that it's going to become more Palace Pier over Baid. So 13-8, 7-4 could be the way to play.
Andy, do you agree?
What with how the market will go, or just
I mean everything? Did you agree that Palace Pier is the likelier of the 2? Do you think the market will shorten up in his favour?
I wouldn't have an overly dogmatic view of which way the market will go. It's very fickle, isn't it? You'd always think with Frankie factor on Saturdays at Ascot would probably suggest that anyway. And I think he's probably got enough credit in the bank to be favourite, hasn't he? He's got better form than Baid in general over a period of time. But Baid very much the Johnny come lately, isn't he? He's the new kid on the block. There you go. That's 2 cliches all in one. That's a world record. And we just don't really still know how good Baid is. Now he's in the real Lion's Den. There's another one. That's 3 I managed to get in there because I do think this is a stellar renewal of this race. The fact that a horse like Mother Earth, even Alcohol Free, you're looking at sort of down the barrel of 20-1 genuine Group 1 horses. It just shows you how good this race is. Baid has never run over the straight track at Ascot, so that's got to be a consideration. He should be fine because he's got a hold-up style, so that's the way horses tend to win on a regular basis here at Ascot, so that's not a problem. He settles quite well. He gives himself a chance of getting home. He's not a hard puller by any stretch. He just wants a good on his pace, which, to all intents and purposes, he should get. My only doubt about Palace Pier would be slightly below par run in this race last year, and it came off the same kind of break, didn't it, John? I think he ran he won the Jack Namaroa, and then he's carrying it all before him, and then he came and stuck and got well put in his place by the Revenant, and that is the bet. As I'm getting onto, finally got to where I needed to be.
Take your time.
Yeah, three cliches down the line. I managed to get where I need to be with the Revenant. Look, I talked about at the top of the show, horses being trained for a specific race, and this is literally in a nutshell. French trained. They won it last year. they've basically geared their whole season around this. You can just tell the way it's been campaigned. 2 runs in early part of spring, April and May, given a 154-day break off the track, brought back at Longchamp the other day, given a classic French ride, dropped right out the back, absolutely flew home, and within another couple of strides would have beaten Real World, who got a good ride by Frankie from the front end. But that should have brought about a decent amount of fine tuning with the Revenant. And we know, looking at his track record here at Ascot, that he peaks at this time of year in this race, and he's got his favoured soft ground again. He's got the perfect run style for the track. He likes to be dropped out, and he gets brought through, and he comes with a late run, and he's always strong in the finish. And that is the kind of horse I'd love to back, even more so at the price he's likely to be. He's going to be around about 8-1. Again, another one that's going to go in all my each-way multiples. I just can't see him not being in the frame. You know, he's just proven that this is the race for him every year, and he's had a light campaign. As I said, a lot of the other horses, Arc Reed, Mother Earth, and horses such as that nature have all had probably 1 or 2 races too many. So I'm all in on the French horse here.
All in on the Revenants. And Andy, sometimes when we're talking and you're talking up a horse like this, I often see the prices start to go, and I wonder if you're tapping away, getting your bets on as you're talking. But this time, the opposite's happened. Hills, as I was watching it, knocking the Revenant out from 8-1 out to 17-2. So fastest finger first. Now, I'll go to John for the first answer next up, and you can do your thing. 17-2 best price now, the Revenant. One for Andy there. Palace Pier, the one for John. On then to the penultimate race on Champions Day. It is the Champions Stakes, where we've got Mishrif is the 6-4 favourite ahead of Adayar at 2-1. Adayib is 6-1. Dubai Honor 8-1. 14-1. Bar John, coming to you for this one. A similar shape to the race, I guess, as with the QE2, with 2 at the top end and then a few class horses in behind as well. How do you see this going?
Yeah, Mishrif, after he won at York, sensational performance in the Dublin International in August. They had several alternatives that could have gone so many places. I thought maybe Irish Champions League would have been the way they've gone, but this is when they decided upon. I think it's a deeper race than it was last year, so I'm happy to be against last year's winner, Adayar, for that reason, although it's had a nice break since the Eclipse Stakes, Adayar, and this will have been the target for some time. I'm not too sure if the ground's going to be soft enough for it. Adayar, I think this could be a bit of an afterthought. I'm not so much worried about the drop in trip. It's going 1.25 miles for the first time since April at Sandown for the Derby winner. But I don't know if this was ever on the radar until after the Arc a few weeks ago, and it was only last weekend that Charlie Appleby started talking about the fact that he's going to leave it on the Monday at the 5-day stage and see how things pan out. So they're going for it anyway, Adayar, and it's fair play. It adds so much to the race. But I think Mishrif, I thought that was an electric performance at York. That was really, really good. And I'm happy enough to be with him. Dubai Honor, I think, is a big runner. I'd fancy Dubai Honor more of the William Haggas pair. It's been under the radar all summer, and they supplemented it just earlier in the week for plenty of money to put in there. They got that money in the bank anyway after the French win a couple of weeks back. But I think that could be the pick of the William Haggas pair. But I'm sticking in the Mishrif camp, I'm afraid.
Sticking in the Mishrif camp at 6-4 there for John. Andy?
Yeah, I think Mishrif is the right favourite, and a strong one at that. You know, he's proven that he's one of the best horses in the world around in and around this trip. It's hard to fault him, really, isn't it? You know, he's got a nice draw. He's relatively fresh. You know, he hasn't run for 59 days. I like the way his season's been campaigned. He's very much, this has been his race and like work backwards. Whereas there's no way Adayar has had this as his target and they're working backwards. I mean, the Arc was his race. That was clearly the plan mapped out from the King George, and he ran really well. He just didn't get didn't get home over in the 1.5 miles. I think partly to do with the fact that he got taken onto the far side of the road. I don't think much has been made of that at Longchamp. But if he went on that dead rail on the far side when it had all been churned up, it definitely didn't do any favours. I think it's known in the trade as being taken onto the swamp. And it was no great surprise to me that the actual winner, the German horse, came farthest and away from the rail towards the near side. I think it was a significant factor in that German horse winning. So you could half forgive him for not quite putting it all together. and let's face it, he is a high quality horse that's got proven Ascot form. But I'd prefer Mishriff out of the front two. There's no doubt about that. I actually think this race is similar to quite a few of these with top heavy market leaders. Has got a bit more depth into it, and I do like the shape of these races because you can get great value about horses who are almost certain to turn up and got tremendous track form. And Adayar, who John mentioned there in passing, who won this race last year, is definitely one horse I'd look to back each way because his form figures for this track are 1-1-2-2-2-1. So again, it's just the kind of horse, regardless of form. I just look at a horse who's got the body of work to suggest I'm going to get a run for my money, whatever happens. And at the prices, he's definitely another horse I want to be sticking in some each way multiples at 13-2. Again, I like the fact that he hasn't run for 105 days. Haggis has had this race on his mind for a little while, and you know he could have easily they could have easily thought, right, Dubai won the other day well in France. Let's run him, and that's not run Adayar, but I think Adayar deep down, I think he's probably their number one, and the other two had been parachuted in there at the last minute. I'd certainly have a healthy respect for Dubai Honor. I got him doing a good back end sectional when he won at Longchamp the other day. And talking of Longchamp, I do think Seelyway will run really well. Don't forget this fella finished second to St Mark's Basilica in the French Derby early in the season over 1.25 miles. And I just didn't like his track position in the Arc de Triomphe. But if you fancy Adayar, and a lot do, at 7-4, I can't believe for the life of me why Seelyway is a 14-1 poke. And he's got a run style tailor-made for this trial. I've watched Seelyway over the last 2 years. I followed him last year as a 2-year-old, and he likes to be switched off, held up, and then brought with a run. He's got a good turn of foot. So, again, I'm probably going to do some each way multiples here and stick to him, I bet. Adayar would be the number one for sure. And Seelyway, I'm more than happy to put him in as well.
Yeah, I mentioned Adayar 6-1 with 365, 15-2 now with Hills. So a massive price there. 15-2 Adayar, yeah.
What am I saying? That's a massive price.
For those listening rather than watching, for those listening to this rather than watching the YouTube video, Andy's face there was an absolute picture. Seelyway is says at 14-1. Yeah, 14-1 with 365, 12-1 with Hills. John, but before we move on to the last race, just going to come to you just on Mishriff again. I mean, is there any concern that in Mishriff's pretty stellar career so far, since being a novice, two of the worst runs have probably come at Ascot. I mean, I don't know if the run occurred, a month or so, 2 months or so ago behind Adayar was too poor, but this race last year, going into it 4-1 and was beaten 12 lengths into 8th. We know that Ascot is a course where certain horses struggle at Ascot if they don't run well there. Are you at all concerned at 6-4 that Mishriff might be one of those, or was there enough promise back in July to suggest that it should be okay?
Yeah, I thought there is a bit of a concern. You'd rather the run of the Champion Stakes last year had been better. I just thought the Champion Stakes, the meeting last year, was on really soft ground. We had a couple of weeks earlier, we had a meeting at Ascot that was abandoned, and the ground never really recovered. They had a lot of rain since in the intervening 2 weeks. This has been different. We had a really heavy ground or very soft ground 2 weeks ago, but it's been virtually dry since then. So I think the ground on Saturday will be probably realistically as good as Ascot could have hoped for at this time of year, and I don't think it'll be as bad as last year. And I actually think Mishriff just looks a better model of late, and if it would have been genuinely soft ground on Saturday, I would have been more concerned, but hopefully he'll get away with it, and well, hopefully he'd be fine on Saturday anyway.
Yeah, we'll see. Going to be interesting. Mishriff going to be popular with many at 6-4. On then to the last race of the day. It's the Balmoral Handicap, and Sunray Major is the 11-4 favourite. I think just seeing if Hills, 11-4 favourite. King Leonidas 5-1. Aldari 7-1, Nugget 8-1, Matthew Flinders 16s, Shalier 16s, Escobar, Dashing Roger, Johan all 20-1, 25-1. A few in there: Kenzai Warrior, Raise You, Montatham, Ross Colin, Saltonstall, Sabuska, 33-1 bar. Plenty in here, and Andy, it's never an easy race to pick the winner of. But am I right in thinking that your pick here, Andy, is the same as your McDonald's order? You're after the Nuggets.
I'm after the Nuggets, yeah. Yeah, I've been waiting for Nugget to running one of these races for a little while now. I thought when he was early on in the season, when he was unlucky in the Thirst Cup and not, running some of those fantastic time figures he was doing, that when he won, was it the Spring Cup? Was it? Did he win the Spring Cup? I think he did, didn't he? John might be there to help me out. That this fella would probably end up at Royal Ascot in the Group 1, the Queen Anne. And I was waiting for. I kept putting him in my search engine. Nugget future entries. Got no entries at Royal Ascot. I thought, what's happened to him? Is he badly injured, or is he retired, or whatever? And all of a sudden, he shipped up at Haydock in late September, didn't he? After a 147-day break, and he sort of took a handicap in the style or in the manner that suggested that he certainly wouldn't have been far away in group races had they gone down that particular route. I just think they were looking to get him back on track and perhaps exploit his current mark before maybe next season stepping into that category. Because I do think he'll be a Queen Anne bound next season for sure. And this will give us a perfect idea whether Ascot suits him. I've got a sneaky feeling it might, because he seems to like a straight track, as he proved when he won at Newbury. He's just got an amazing cruising speed. If you look at him. He's always a horse that's on the bridle, and he finds plenty for pressure. So this race is going to be absolutely tailor-made for him. He's got a nice draw, I think. We don't know until we've seen the sprint race what will materialise. You could hold all bets until you've seen that race, and then make your play for this race. You don't have to bet it on Friday or Saturday morning just because you want to get a good price. I think you might be better off just taking the price at points shorter and waiting to see if you're on the right side of the draw. But providing still 7 is okay for Nugget, it's hard to see him not going well, because I think he's a proper quality horse that I don't think they've even scratched the surface with yet. I think he's a better prospect than Adayar, and I'm not absolutely totally convinced Adayar stays a mile. He was good the other day over 7, but he wants a stronger than 7. He's tried a mile and he didn't get it. You'd have to have a healthy respect for the favourite Sunray Major, but this is a far cry from what he took on the other day. He might have looked good, but his time figure wasn't anything out of the ordinary. And I'd be more than happy to take him on at 11-4. I think that's a silly price. He's got to prove himself for over a mile. Is he the right side of the draw? 21. I mean, he could be in the worst possible place there. He's got a lot to prove for me, Sunray Major. So I think Nugget's a better horse than him anyway. And the other one to mention as well is Sabuska. I mean,
taking the words out of John's mouth there, I think.
Yeah,
how this horse is
25-1.
It's just a complete head scratcher. I mean, you roll the clock back a year ago, and he was 4th in the Champion Stakes off a mark of 111. He run his absolute face off that day. He had no right to finish 4th. He was a 66-1 shot. But it just shows you what this boy can do when he's got the straight track here at Ascot. And if you look at all his runs here, take away the round track runs, his straight track form here at Ascot is sensational. He's now actually been dropped to 111, having only got beat 2 lengths at Sandown last time out. Again, at a track that probably wouldn't play into his strengths. And he's only run this far. His 2 runs so far this season at Ascot have been 3rd at Oh This Is Us and 3rd to Palace Pier, only beaten 2 lengths in the Queen Anne. So he's a genuine Group 1 horse, and he runs off 111 in a handicap, and he's 25-1, and he's drawn stall 3, and he's got his ground as well. And Oisin Murphy booked as well. The list of positives are stacking up by the second, and the last list of positive is that I think John McConnell's going to speak favourably of him as well.
Yeah, I don't think Oisin Murphy's going to be left wondering at the end of this one, is he, John? Positives for Sabuska for you too?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to rant on for 90 seconds, but Andy saying all that means I've only got 9 seconds to play with. Exactly the same things. He would have hit the frame in the QE2 this time last year, but he veered across the track, which is unlike him. He ends up on the stand rails. I think he finished a neck or so behind Palace Pier as a result of that. But his form at the straight track here is superb. He won the 1 year they had the Hunt Cup Consolation the summer of last year. He won that as well. There's plenty to like. There's only about a stone between top weight and bottom weight. He cannot be 25-1. That is... Well, he is 20. I'm not saying that isn't the price. I'd be staggered if that price is still in town on Saturday morning. And if we can get that with an extra place or 2, all the better. Another horse I would mention is Reju, the Joseph O'Brien horse, who...
Yeah.
He's a bit hit and miss. But he's got some form, and I don't think the Galway run was too bad last time. He won a similar race. He's got big field form in
Ireland. He won at the Curragh, didn't he?
He did, yeah. He looked a good horse a couple of years ago, but when he was at Andrew Baldwin, ran a few small field races, such as the Rosa Lancaster Stakes, and at Newmarket, he won a listed or a Group 3 there in the summer meeting. But he's got now a bit of big field straight course form as well. He can be ridden prominently. There's not a huge amount of pace. What pace I have detected in this race could be a negative for Sabaska, because the pace I can see are all among the high numbers. But as Andy says, this could change completely. And we saw in this race last year when Niord scraped the paint over on the far side, you really want to be low on that occasion, as it was proved a couple of weeks ago as well at the meeting in the 7 furlong handicap then. So I think Reju is a bit of a player at a price. Nugget looks rock solid of those ahead of the market. But I'm with Andy. I think Sabaska is a big, big price. I'd actually say it's just the wrong price, to be quite honest. It's one of those that you jumps off the page and you think, that can't be right. That can't be 25s. But if it is, so we'll have to take it then, won't we?
Yeah, don't pass it up. Nugget 8 to 1. Raise you 25 to 1 with Paddy's, Betfair Sportsbook and Bet Victor, and Sabaska. That 25 to 1 is with William Hill and Bet365 at the moment. So act fast there for Sabaska. Thank you very much to both Andy, and a fantastic debut from John as well for joining us today and going through the card on Champions Day. Fingers crossed some winners in there. Do subscribe to the Oddschecker YouTube channel and to the podcast on any podcast platform to get all of these previews and plenty other things as well on the YouTube channel. Lots of feature content coming out soon, which we're very excited about as well. Do download the Oddschecker app. There you can find the best prices, bookie offers, free bets, place terms, and the best tipsters in the game, including Andy himself. Do enjoy the racing, and please ensure that you are gambling responsibly. Don't go crazy on these tips. They're just our fancies. Ensure you're only betting what you can afford to lose. So please do gamble responsibly, but crucially, make sure you enjoy Champions Day. It promises to be an absolute cracker.